For anyone who knows me knows that out of all the game genres there's one that really floats my boat, and that's shoot 'em ups. Shoot 'em ups have been around since the very start of arcades with the awesome Space Invaders, which was a fixed ship shooter, but over time they have evolved into so much more. In this series I'll be taking a look at the best shoot 'em ups from the biggest names in arcades. So today I'll be kicking off the series with a developer that was renowned for hard but good games, and that's Toaplan. There's also another reason to start with this developer, and that's because they made my favourite ever shoot 'em up, which we will see in first place. So enough talking about it, let's take a look at every Toaplan Arcade Shoot 'em up in order of greatness. First up in 14th place we have Tiger-Heli. Released in 1985 by Taito and Romstar, it was Toaplan's flagship shoot 'em up. This is a creation of Masahiro Yuji and Tatsuya Yamura. The game is loosely based on the Taito game Gyrodine, which was released a year earlier. It's a vertical scrolling shooter that was ported to the NES and later to the PlayStation. The NES version was so popular it sold over 1 million copies. The game is last on the list, but that's not because it's rubbish. It's down to the high standards that Toaplan always met when releasing shoot 'em ups. 13th place is taken by Zero Wing. Released in 1989, this was the 8th shoot 'em up from Toaplan and was headed up by chief developer Toshiaki Ota and a team made up of developers who had worked on most of the previous 7 games. The game was never meant for commercial release, but instead started out as a training exercise, but was deemed so good that it did get released. Zero Wing uses the same engine from Hellfire, which was released earlier that year. As well as the arcade, it was ported to the Sega Mega Drive and PC Engine CD-ROM. Slap Fight is in 12th position. Released in 1986 by Taito, this is probably the best known game on the list, and it's one of the best known shoot 'em ups of all time. It was the second shoot 'em up from Toaplan and took everything from Tiger-Heli to another level. It was the game to introduce the massive weapon systems that we would come to love in later games. The game was ported to a number of systems and even recently has been remade on the Amstrad, which is very good. In 11th place we have Twin Cobra. The game was released by Taito and Romstar in 1987 and it's a sequel to Tiger-Heli. It was the 4th shoot 'em up from Toaplan and took everything from the first game to another level with more intricate levels, enemies and bosses. The funny thing is about this game, it was never ever gonna be Twin Cobra. It was developed as a one-player game, but as simultaneous 2-player games were doing so well in America, the decision was made to do just that and Twin Cobra was born. 10th place is taken by Dogyuun. Released in 1992 by Toaplan, this is one of only 2 shoot 'em ups from Toaplan that didn't get ported to the home systems. Whilst visually it's one of the best releases, the reception of the game wasn't great and people said that they thought the game mechanics were a letdown. This is thought to be the main reason that it never got a home port. Due to time constraints, this game has a bug that results in the kill screen after 5 loops, meaning that technically it can never truly be completed. Hellfire is in 9th position. This game was released by Taito and USA Games in 1989. It's a game that Tatsuya Yamura was heavily involved in, as they wanted to take what they had done with vertical top-down shooters and translate it into a horizontal side-scroller. The team had problems with this, as previously they had never needed to worry about background collisions etc. The game also incorporates one of the most unique weapon controls I've ever known in a shoot 'em up, especially for its time. Hellfire was ported to the Sega Genesis and PC Engine Super CD-ROM and is still loved by shoot 'em up fans on those systems. In 8th place we have Twin Hawk. This game was developed for Taito in 1989. The game was the first shoot 'em up from the designer Yoshiro Nozawa and was worked on by the team that had been responsible for most of the previous shoot 'em ups. Even though the Japanese game magazine Game Machine listed this the 7th most successful table arcade of the year, outperforming the likes of Golden Axe, the reception wasn't great and it was regarded a flop. I think personally this was down to the similarities with games like Flying Shark etc, but as a standalone game it's good and definitely not a flop. 7th place is taken by Fire Shark. Released in 1989 by Toaplan and Romstar, this is a sequel to the brilliant Flying Shark. The game used a flamethrower weapon upgrade similar to the blue laser from Truxton. It was also developed in-house for the Sega Genesis with some minor changes, one of which being the difficulty level, as the arcade was deemed to be too hard by the Japanese market. Another home port for the Sharp X68K was developed but never released. If anyone knows if that ROM is available anywhere, please let me know. Grindstormer is in 6th position. Released in 1993 by Toaplan, this was the company's penultimate arcade shoot 'em up. It is considered to be the spiritual successor to Slap Fight. The game was created by a team of new Toaplan developers and headed up by Kenichi Takano, who would later be known for producing the game Donpachi. Also, one of the developers was Tsuneki Aikida, who later became the co-founder of Cave, the gods of bullet hell shooters. Although we all know this as Grindstormer, it actually started out as Bakuretsu Wing and later renamed to V.V for the Japanese market. On release, the game had mixed reviews, but the main concern was that it was what we would come to know now as a bullet hell shooter, which at the time wasn't as popular as they are now. I wonder if this was influenced by Tsuneki Aikida. In 5th place we have Batsugun. This was released by Toaplan, Taito and Unite Trading in 1993 and will be the last shoot 'em up from Toaplan. It was the same development team that had worked on the previous releases and was headed up by Fireshark designer Yoko Tataka. Again, Tsuneki Akida was on board and this took bullet hell to another level and is hailed by many as the first true bullet hell game. This is the only Toaplan game to get released on the Sega Saturn, and the second edition of the game named Batsugun Special Version was developed, but sadly was never officially released, although there are versions of it available as Toaplan went into bankruptcy. 4th place is taken by Truxton II. Released in 1992 by Toaplan, this is a follow-up to Truxton. This is the first game that Toaplan used PCM, digital sound. The game follows on much where the first game left off and it has the same overall feel, although for me the first game will always be superior. The home port of the game was only made for the FM towns, but recently it has been announced that Truxton II as well as Twin Cobra and Flying Shark will be ported to the Switch by M2, but so far no release date has been announced and it is thought that it will only be available on the Japanese Nintendo eShop. One more thing about this game that I think my good friend and shoot 'em up junkie Big Juffer will like, and that is apparently this is the inspiration for Choren Shah 68K, which I know is one of his favourite shoot 'em ups. Vimana is in 3rd position. Released in 1991 by Toaplan and Tecmo, this is another game that never got a home port and also another game that was deemed a flop in the arcades. I can actually remember playing this game for the first time on MAME and it not having sound. It did eventually get emulated in MAME 0.181. After seeking some info from David Haywood, who works on the MAME project, he told me that this was down to the game using processors that had the sound program embedded inside them, which was read protected. Eventually, Capsoft did the painstaking work of stripping down the components so the sound could be dumped, and now we get the Vimana sound in all its greatness. In 2nd place I put Flying Shark. This was the 3rd shoot 'em up by Toaplan and it was released in 1987 by Taito, Romstar and Electrocoin. As an attempt to make the game depict the feel of war, the developers were told to try and capture the feel of the movie Apocalypse Now, and they were also flown out to Thailand to get some ideas for backdrops for the game. The game was a massive success and it is the most ported Toaplan game, being ported to a staggering 10 systems. It's also the first Toaplan game to use the Motorola 68000 microprocessor, and the results were plain to see against the 2 previous releases. For some, Flying Shark will be top of this list, but the next game will always rule for me. And now, in 1st place we have Truxton. Released in 1988 by Taito and Midway, this is a creation of Masahiro Yuji. The game was the first game from Toaplan to adopt the strategy of needing the right weapon at the right time. An example of this would be on one level you need the green weapon to unlock a secret that no other weapon works on, and also how different weapons affect different bosses. The game was faithfully ported to the Sega Genesis and PC Engine, and plans were also to release it on the Sharp 68K, although even though this was announced in magazines it never actually came about. Whether or not the game was developed on a system I don't know, so if you know, let me know, because I'm sure that the 68K version would have been awesome. Okay, that's it for the first arcade shoot 'em up video. I've gone a little bit more in depth than I normally do with these lists, as the viewers have kept on requesting more information on the games, so I hope it's been enjoyable and not boring. I don't think it's been boring, but that's just because I love these games. Coming up in the future I'll be covering Capcom, IREM, Jaleco, Konami, Namco, Razing, Taito and Tecmo. Let me know in the comments below if you've liked this video and if you want me to add any more development companies to the list. Also, if you have enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Till next time, this is OSG signing out.